Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Law with Lucas. Wednesday evening, November 10th to 2021, the 246th birthday of our beloved Marine Corps. I have a bunch of crazy Marine buddies that I dearly respect and admire. Happy Marine Corps birthday to you Marines out there. Um, Hopefully everybody understands that we wouldn't be probably a country at all if it weren't for the Marine Corps. So Semper Fi to each and every one of you. Once a Marine, always. Hey, Ken, Sally, Lynn, Amy, Molly, Wendy, tons of folks jumping on. That's my Aunt Wendy, even. How about that? Let's see here. Um, First things first. How about we like and love and I don't know, care, whatever you got to do for the video. Helps us break the algorithm and get us out there. Share the video. Going to be a lot of great information on this episode. I'm going to try to fit it all in about 30 minutes or so. So we're going to get started here directly. If I miss any of you for a hello, I apologize. I absolutely love each and every one of you. Love having you on here. Love having you join me. Please feel free to ask questions. I love, love, love answering your questions. So, without further ado, well, one last thing, last but definitely not least, tomorrow is Veterans Day. So, along with the Marine Corps birthday today, tomorrow, Veterans Day, thank you. God bless each and every one of our veterans. Um, you know, I don't know what else can be said that hasn't been said a million times, except that, I appreciate you. I thank you. I thank you very much. My family and I talk often. There you go. My family and I talk often, especially with my boys, about what that flag back there means, what it represents, and who keeps it able to hang on that wall freely, right? We don't have the liberty and freedom we have if we don't have people willing to stand up and fight for it. So, those of you patriots out there know that you do things each and every day to stand up for the liberty and freedom that we hold dear in this country, particularly against enemies, foreign enemies. We wouldn't be able to do that if it weren't for our fantastic veterans, some who have given everything to keep this country free. So, thank you very much, veterans. God bless you. God bless your families. We love you. Missing in action, killed in action, any of you families who have dealt with any of that, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. Okay, so a few more hellos. I'm going to miss a bunch of people, but we're going to get started nonetheless. So, Lori, Donald, Mary, Tina, Pamela, thank you all, Betty, Jan, Tina, Melissa. Fantastic. It's awesome to have each and every one of you on here tonight. So, let's get started. I want to start with what's probably the biggest thing in the news right now, Kyle Rittenhouse. So for those of you who don't know, it's probably time to come out from under your rock and join the rest of us in the land of the living, the home of the free and the brave and whatnot. Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked while he was attempting to render aid and protect businesses in Kenosha, Wisconsin, during the summer of violence, the Antifa violence that was going on in Kenosha. From their perspective, in response to the Jacob Blake incident, where Mr. Blake had a knife, there was an attempt for the police to arrest him pursuant to a domestic violence issue or incident. He went to reach into his vehicle. Officer shot him. He's now paralyzed. Based on that, or at least that was the pretense of the violent protests went on in Kenosha for weeks. Kyle Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old kid who lived across the river, basically, or barely across the border, not far from Kenosha, in a town, I believe, called Antioch, Illinois. He had friends and family in Kenosha. He was in Kenosha at the time, ran into some folks that owned a car dealership, him and some friends went to sort of protect the car dealership from vandalism during the protests, and furthermore, Kyle was there to render aid to anybody that was hurt, injured, so on and so forth. During that process, some of the protesters eventually chased him. One of them in particular, who was a particularly nasty individual who is now deceased, made several threats directed directly at Mr. Rittenhouse, attempted to chase him down, was going to, quote, cut your heart out and kill him or kill you, end quote. And long story short, he was deceased summarily with about 4 shots, I believe, to various parts of his body from Mr. Rittenhouse's AR-15 semi-automatic 223 rifle. Not that it matters, but I think it was a Smith & Wesson. Nonetheless, after that, there was another individual who also attacked Mr. Rittenhouse. He was also quickly deceased. And then a third chased after Mr. Rittenhouse down a road right in front of police, right in front of numerous cameras, hit Kyle with a skateboard, then drew a gun on Kyle, Mr. Rittenhouse, who then shot him as well, hit him in the bicep, in his words, disintegrated his bicep, but he did live, and he testified in the trial. So the long and short of what I want to get to here is, number one, this case shouldn't ever have made it to a jury trial, period. A very, very clear-cut investigation showing self-defense on the part of Kyle Rittenhouse. I believe that the prosecution is acting in bad faith and has acted in bad faith in the trial as well. The defense has made numerous motions related to that. The latest was yesterday, where actually, I take that back. It was today, while Kyle Rittenhouse was testifying, the prosecution attempted to make issue of the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse exercised his right to remain silent. And the court quickly dismissed the jury and admonished the prosecution for trying to make something that was a constitutional bedrock of our society into something negative, that could potentially injure the character of Rittenhouse right in front of the jury, something that he had strongly discouraged earlier in motions made by the attorneys. And I want Kaylee, I think, Mrs. Producer, you have a video that we want to bring up right now to show the judge actually getting very animated and heated, directed at the prosecution. So if you have that queued up, go ahead and pull it up whenever you're ready. I'd like for you all to hear this if you haven't heard it already, because the judge makes a very clear point to call out the prosecution for their antics and what they're attempting to do.
Why would you think that that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that.
So what I'll say is, when he says he'll leave it at that, he had plenty more to say. And I've seen judges get much more animated than he was. And I think he held back because he knows that he'll be judged negatively in the press. But those kinds of actions, I have seen prosecutors be brought up on disciplinary actions right in the state of Kansas recently for actions like that, where a judge makes it very clear that they want a certain thing to happen, and the prosecutor pushes the envelope and tries to use it to, disparage a witness or the defendant in a way that the judge doesn't want to allow. So there's been questions, and I'll go ahead and start answering some of these. Why hasn't there been a mistrial? Some people have asked me why the defense hasn't made a motion for dismissal based on the facts as we already have them. There's numerous things. So let me just handle those very quickly. First, the defense did move for a mistrial today. there's a couple of ways that could go. They moved for mistrial with prejudice, which would mean the prosecution wouldn't be able to retry Kyle on any of the charges that the court decides to throw out with prejudice. Now, there's the main charge, the murder charge. It's highly, highly unlikely that Mr. Rittenhouse will be convicted of intentional homicide under Wisconsin law. All of those jury members would have to find beyond a reasonable doubt that Kyle did not have any objective reason to fear for his life or his safety when he, pulled the trigger those numerous times. Very, very unlikely. There's also the possibility that the judge, notwithstanding the verdict from the jury, could throw out the jury verdict and find Kyle not guilty of that charge altogether, even after a guilty verdict. Now, that would be extremely rare. However, it is allowed under Wisconsin statutes. I checked today. There's a principle in the law called judgment notwithstanding the verdict. Lawyers call it JNOV, but it's basically where the judge says, "Yeah, jury, I heard you, but there's no objective way under the sun that you could have come to that reasonable conclusion unless you were biased from some other reason." And there's been plenty in this trial that he could find as a reason to point to why the jury could have been persuaded in the wrong direction. I don't think that it's going to come to that. But the real key is there's other charges. There's weapons charges. There was one that was thrown out, which I think was violation of curfew, and there were others. But the key is Mr. Rittenhouse should be acquitted of all charges. He was doing something that many other people were doing, that the police were not arresting anyone for. He was, everything that he was doing is of questionable illegality. But he wouldn't have even been brought up on those charges had the murder not happened, had the homicides not happened, murder in the eyes of the prosecution. So when that falls apart, I think all the rest of the charges should too, but that doesn't mean that they will. So there's still more to come on that. I think the judge wants to hear the prosecution's response to the question of mistrial. At this point, probably would behoove the prosecution to allow for a mistrial, but then argue against the prejudice. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to turn out. At this point, it could go a bunch of different ways. But it's very clear to me that the judge doesn't believe this case should have ever been brought to his court, and that's why he's being so hostile to the prosecution. He is not known to be some right-wing judge. There are some of those in Wisconsin, but not that many. And this judge is certainly not known for that. And he's definitely being hostile to the prosecution. And I would say that the biggest reason for that is he doesn't think this case should have ever been brought. He's trying to make that as clear as he can. If there is a mistrial, or if somehow there is a hung jury, this case will not be retried. I can't imagine for the life of me that this case would be retried if that happens. So for those of you who are concerned, genuinely concerned about Kyle Rittenhouse, I still think it's a very, very good chance that he will be either acquitted or released based on a mistrial with prejudice. Something's going to happen. This kid's not going to serve life in prison for the murder of the two people who were killed that night. So that's the Rittenhouse thing. There's so much going on there. I could spend an entire show on it. And if I really felt like it was the kind of thing that threatened our liberty to a large degree, I probably would. But the main thing for me is, Kaylee's obviously got something she wants to get in here, and I'll let you in just a second. But the main thing for me is that exactly what Kyle Rittenhouse did in Kenosha could happen in any city in the Midwest. If that kind of protest happened in Topeka, Kansas, I would be right there doing the same thing Kyle Rittenhouse did. And if they attacked me, I would do the exact same thing he did. So understand that while I think this is going to go away eventually, not only is he being punished individually, but this is an attempt to squash all of us patriots who would do the same thing Rittenhouse did. Go ahead, Mrs. Producer.
Did you want me to play that other video?
Yes, please do. So I want to set this video up. This one was, and I got to think, this video was I can't remember the guy's name. The guy who lived, the guy who was shot in the bicep. It's a Gross Kreitz or whatever. He was on the stand as a prosecution witness, which makes sense, right? So the prosecution gets to call their case. The defense gets to cross-examine those witnesses. Well, the prosecution called this witness, and that witness testified something that was extremely important to Rittenhouse's case for self-defense, which is that Rittenhouse lowered his weapon when Grosskreitz, or however you pronounce his name, lowered his, when he put his hands up, Rittenhouse lowered his weapon. When in my view, the attacker reached for his gun and pointed his gun at Rittenhouse, only then did Rittenhouse shoot him. So the key to a self-defense defense is an objective fear for your life, or safety or great bodily harm. Depending on the jurisdiction, it uses different language, but essentially, if you fear for your life, you can take the person's life who you fear is about to take yours. When that individual testified to those facts, that was the end. I would have, as soon as the prosecution shut its case, as soon as it was done, as soon as it rested, I would have made a motion to dismiss immediately and said that the affirmative defense of self-defense was made very clear by the prosecution's chief witness when he testified that Rittenhouse only fired his weapon when that individual raised his and pointed it at Kyle. Go ahead, Mrs. Producer, play that.
Cross-examination. The defense went through the video again, at times second by second.
When you were standing 3 to 5 feet from him with your arms up in the air, he never fired, right?
Correct.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
And they don't show the video in the video there, but many people have reported it was very clear and easy to see if you watch the trial. Right then, the prosecution, one of the prosecutors did a very clear face palm. He knew that it was likely that that would be testified to. He was hoping it wouldn't be, and the way it was set up and the way that it happened was just the final nail in the prosecution's coffin. Pardon the pun. And here's the thing, none of this stuff is news to anybody in that courtroom. That's the thing about trials like this, criminal trials. All the evidence is known to all of the parties before the case ever starts, before the trial ever starts. The only people in that room, other than the media and the court reporter, who are not privy to the facts that are about to be laid out, is the jury. So the judge, potentially, I mean, depending on the motions that were made, but certainly the defense attorneys and the prosecutors knew that that would be the testimony of that individual before he said it in the courtroom. So why the hell was that case ever brought in the first place? So I think that that prosecutor probably ought to have disciplinary action brought against him, certainly for antics in the courtroom. And if nothing else, I would at least hope that Rittenhouse has some lawsuits lined up against some media outlets, maybe for malicious prosecution, numerous things the minute he's acquitted, ready to go. But I don't know. That's just me. So we're going to shift gears. You guys can follow that information. I think we should wrap up by the end of the week. I don't think the jury will take long to come to a verdict, but I want to move on because we've got plenty of other things I want to talk about. To me, the next topic is something much more important than, one criminal case. Now, to Mr. Rittenhouse, certainly not. And I don't mean to disparage you at all, Kyle, and I wish you the best. But I will say this. What's happening right now in the John Durham probe of the Russiagate scandal that bogged down Trump's presidency for at least 3.5 years should terrify most Americans. So we've got a story here, and I'm going to talk about this in just a second from Real Clear Politics, and it lays it out very, very, very clearly what happened. If any of you have listened to Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Dan Bongino does a lot of this, Sean Hannity, I don't think anybody laid it out better than Rush. He spent a lot of time talking about this tangled web that resulted in people like Jake Tapper getting awards, and all these people who were involved directly and indirectly with this whole hoax, all started by the Hillary campaign, the Clinton campaign. The how do they say it? The chickens are coming home to roost, so to speak. Durham is starting to hand out indictments. So the first one ended up being, obviously we know there was a FBI lawyer who changed an email in order to provide a incorrect information to a FISA court to get a warrant to do a wiretap. He faced a penalty for that. I'm not going to get into that because a lot of these indictments aren't going to amount to much, unfortunately, except for proving to America, anybody who wants to pay attention, that the entire Russiagate controversy was a setup. It was bought, it was engineered, bought, paid for, peddled entirely by the Hillary Clinton campaign. If you don't know how deep those tentacles go, read this story. I'm going to read part of it now. To me, this is kind of important. Durham's latest indictment charges Igor Danchenko, who was pictured right there above where Kaylee's got it scrolled down to, with lying multiple times to the FBI. Danchenko, who worked for the Brookings Institution, if you don't know who that is, the Brookings Institution is a left-wing think tank that every single time one of these indictments comes up, the Brookings Institute is right there in the middle of it. So when you hear Brookings, just think Clintons, because they have been neck deep in the Clinton machine for 2 decades. Who worked for the Brookings Institution is a Russian expert. May not be a household name, but he was a crucial player in concocting the false story that Donald Trump was collaborating with the Kremlin to win the White House. The real conspiracy, as it turns out, was aimed at Trump and conducted by the Clinton campaign and her longtime associates. The FBI continued running with the story long after it had ample evidence to know it was a concoction. House Democrats ran with it even longer, basking in the fulsome, uncritical media coverage. All of it was fake. This all was based around the Steele dossier, which was really just an effort by a British spy, Christopher Steele, who took information from Danchenko, which was nothing but old rumors and absolute nonsense made up about Donald Trump from time that he spent in Russia. That was all nonsense. Some of it involved the golden showers, which was his predilection to pee on hotel beds and get hookers and all this kind of nonsense. None of it ever true. None of it ever established as fact by any independent person ever. It was a bunch of innuendo and nonsense that Danchenko peddled to Christopher Steele, who then peddled to the Clinton campaign as opposition research. Well, the Clinton campaign took all of that nonsense, turned it into what they called a dossier, and then tried to peddle it out to the media outlets. And you guys know the media loves this left-wing garbage. They try to run with it every chance they can, and they didn't. Why didn't they? Well, they didn't because this kind of salacious information would have to have some fact to it, some independent verification, and it didn't. It never did. It never could. So how did the Clintons get it in front of America as a real, quote, dossier owned by the FBI? Here's what they did. James Comey went to the White House shortly after Trump was elected and told Donald Trump, hey, just so you know, this is the kind of stuff you may see in the future, and showed him the dossier. Next thing you know, it shows up on CNN and in let me see if I can find the name of the trash website that ran with it first. Well, I'll find it here in a second. It's not terribly important. Some trash online website, BuzzFeed or something like that. Anyway, ran with it and said FBI shares information with Trump that came from the Kremlin, and they turned this into an absolute boondoggle of a story that just continues to unfold from there. Then the FBI uses it to get FISA warrants to spy on the Trump campaign through one of the aides, Carter Page, who didn't have anything to do with it, who wasn't ever working with Russia. The FBI knew that he wasn't working with Russia. How did they know? Because they asked the CIA. What did the CIA say? They said, he's not. He works for us. So what did Kevin Kleinsmith from the FBI do to get around that cute little fact? Changed an email to say, no, he doesn't work for the CIA. He is a Russian spy. So, of course, the FISA court turns around, gives the FBI permission to spy on Trump and the Trump campaign, and round and round and round we go. It's a bunch of lies, a bunch of conspiracy. This article is fantastic. Kaylee put the quote up there. Yes, it was BuzzFeed. Kaylee put the web link up there. I really recommend you all read the story. If you don't know, go ahead.
Did you just say boondoggle?
Boondoggle. I might even throw in a little gobbledygook. Let's see, what else can I come up with? I don't know.
Okay,
I'll come
gotta
up with
go.
something. But it's all got me bamboozled, and what was the word I used the other day? Well, anyway, here's the point. I cannot possibly use enough hyperbolic language to express the unbelievable, incessant garbage that was thrown at Donald Trump through this Russiagate nonsense. He was impeached over the whole thing. And the whole time, everybody involved, everybody in the Democrat Party, everybody in the FBI, they all knew it. So, what's interesting is I've got a lot of friends that are calling for the FBI to be disbanded. The idea of the FBI having a federal bureau of investigation is not a bad idea. But when it's run by political operatives, political hacks who are bought, paid for, owned by the Democrat Party, we have a major problem. You know why? Because not only does crap like this happen, but on the other side, we get something that happens like Hunter Biden's laptop, the emails on it that clearly show conspiracy to make payments to the big guy from Ukrainian business endeavors. So let me come back to what I think about the narcissism in the Democrat Party. But every single thing that they've accused the Trump presidency and Donald Trump of doing, someone involved with Donald Trump of doing, they have in fact been doing themselves. Also, we found out this week that James O'Keefe, the founder of Project Veritas, had his home raided. What's the FBI look by the FBI? What's the FBI looking for? Ashley Biden's diary. Why do they want Ashley Biden's diary so bad? Well, it turns out that there's, at least from her perspective, true accounts of terrible behavior, in my view, where she apparently accuses her dad, Joe Biden, of taking I think that the actual language was buck naked showers with her at an inappropriate age, and various other salacious details from this diary. Well, the FBI is chasing after this diary like it's the Willy Wonka's golden ticket. Meanwhile, they skip by red flag after red flag after red flag from the Russiagate controversy because they have an end in mind to their investigations because they're politically motivated. That can't continue. I mean, right now, the FBI is putting together a laundry list of firearms information, who owns them, who has NFA items like suppressors and various other implements and tools that can be used for firearms for shooting and competition, self-defense, anything else. But they're compiling a dossier, so to speak, of everybody and anybody who owns that kind of stuff. Why? Well, if they continue down the paths that they've been on that are politically motivated, like with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I think it's pretty clear to me why. They've got a political motivation, and if they get just enough of a mandate behind them, president like a Joe Biden, I think that they're fully prepared to act on whatever information they can to make patriots in this country's lives hell. That's my that's my opinion. If you read this story, you learn about what's going on in the John Durham investigation. It's sickening and disgusting right now. And he hasn't even indicted some of the folks who were involved at the deepest levels of this conspiracy. I don't believe he's going to go as deep as he could go, but if he does, Betty bar the door, because I don't think the Democrat Party, I don't think the FBI, I don't think the DOJ, I don't think anybody involved with these folks for the last 10 years ever expected somebody would actually investigate their misdeeds. And it's finally happening. So, let's see. Get a few questions. Let's see. The Americans being abused and held in solitary in prison. So, one of the things that I tried to research today a little bit is how many of the people who were arrested for the January 6th stuff are being held on charges of trespass or criminal damage to property and things like that. Everything I found, most of those individuals have been released. The individuals who are still being held with those charges, those aren't the only things they're being held for. They're being held for probation violations, parole violations, various other potential warrants from other states and things like that. I would like to know the number of people, and if anybody has that number, please let me know the number of people who are actually still being held merely for illegal trespass and illegal damage to property or assault of a Capitol police officer, anything like that. I'd like to know the number because I still can't find that there's a lot of those people being held without bond, without bail of any kind by the federal government. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just having a hard time finding that trail. So if you know anybody, please let me know. Amy says there are 40. I'm going to look into that. That gives me some information to kind of go on. I didn't have much today. So, FB lie, no kidding. I anticipate a reckoning when Donald Trump is back in office. I think that'll be day one. I think that part of what he's doing right now, in sort of a shadow government kind of way, is planning the response to every bad move Joe Biden is making. And then I think at the same time, he's probably planning to make a lot of moves administratively right away, firing FBI directors, lots and lot of action. In order for him to be successful in changing the deep state power, the current power in the deep state, he's going to need the Senate. He's going to need a lot of help from the Senate because he's going to have to get a lot of people approved by the Senate. So let's make sure we don't lose and the importance of getting every victory we can for the United States Senate. Winning the House is definitely extremely important. They're doing a lot of bogus investigations, throwing away a lot of money that we don't have, and doing a lot of things that are absolutely ridiculous. That's got to change. Nancy Pelosi needs to be retired, but we can't lose sight of the Senate. It's extremely important that we get seats in the Senate so that we can confirm the people that Donald Trump would appoint or nominate to positions of power in the deep state so we can really make major change. Let's see. Last thing, kind of a fun thing for me, I guess, so to speak. So let's go Brandon, right? That's a fun, what does the left call that? I need to pull this and look at it because it's a funny name. I'm sure that they think it makes them very intellectual, but they call it a minced oath. The definition for a minced oath is basically a euphemism where somebody changes a word, like Kansas, we like muckfazoo and stuff like that, but you basically change a word to get around using the expletive. So that's what they think of. Let's go, Brandon. Here's somebody tell me if I'm wrong here. For me, I was perfectly fine with Joe Biden. Can I say that, Miss? shit, I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. I'm perfectly fine with Joe Biden because I'm sick tired of his kind, people who have been in Washington for 50 plus years, getting to positions of power, making our lives miserable. So I was fine with that. Let's go, Brandon, a euphemistic alternative to FJB. I'm fine with that too, whatever. But let's get it straight. Let's Go Brandon started because some left wing freaking reporter was trying to make it sound like the NASCAR audience wasn't chanting FJB. She didn't say, oh, they're out here chanting Let's Go Brandon because she misheard it. Are you kidding me? It was extremely clear. And I'm telling you, from somebody who's been in media, when hearing it through an IFB, it's even clearer. So don't give me this crap that she didn't know what they were saying. She knew damn good and well what they were saying, and she was trying to change it to make it less impactful, one way or another. Whether she has any clue that she's trying to protect Joe Biden or she just doesn't like the F word, I don't care. My point in saying let's go Brandon was to troll the media. Let me say that again for those of you from Rio Linda. Let's Go Brandon is about trolling the media. The fact that it's a euphemistic replacement for fuck Joe Biden doesn't bother me in the slightest. But I'm fine with either one. So if you folks at Wikipedia and NBC and NPR don't like us saying let's go Brandon, then I say we return right back to where we started. I'm fine with that too. Sound good? Mrs. Producer went and hid under a pillow. She heard me screaming at the camera and she said, all right, I'm out of here. But hey, thank you all so much. Says my audio is scrambled. Darn it. I hope the last part didn't get messed up by the FBI. Hey, if you guys are listening, come knock on my door. I'm willing to talk to you anytime. Absolutely 100%. Otherwise, have a fantastic day. I love each and every one of you. Thank you, veterans. Thank you, Marine Corps. I can't tell you enough how much it means to me that there are people out there willing to fight and die for this country to keep it free. Those of us who aren't in the fighting or dying for this country, we're going to do everything we can to help on the political side, whether it's our votes, our words, our actions in running for political office somewhere, some way. We'll do what we can. I'm going to keep doing what I can. Thank you all. God bless each and every one of you. God bless this fantastic, lovely country.